But I mean, Jeff Buckley's voice. I was playing with Jimmy in the mid-90s when we had it. Buckley was playing and we went to see him, and it was mind-altering. His voice. Spectacular singing and so much conviction.
Yeah.
They made my bones shake. And my soul explode. Robert Plant declared, his voice thick with reverence, as he unveiled his top 9 musicians of all time. The Led Zeppelin frontman didn't hold back naming legends, who his words changed the DNA of rock and roll from Delta blues prophets to pioneers of psychedelic drugs. Plant's list is as loud and beautiful as his legacy. Robert Johnson and Willie Dixon. Beginning at a young age, Robert Plant himself in the raw power and emotional depth of the blues, a style that would shape who he was as both a singer and songwriter. Who grew up in after the war, Plant became a part of a group of young musicians who were spellbound by the scary sounds coming from the South in the United States. The many famous people who inspired one name stood out more than the rest. Like many of his other plants, British people at the time held Johnson in close to mythic regard, once saying that the musicians of his time were very fired up. By Robert Johnson, who we all owe a lot about our lives. Johnson's records from the 1930s that are very harsh carried an eerie intensity that really hit home with Plant. The spectral how Johnson's voice sounds paired with his smooth fingerpicking on the guitar and moving stories of love lost going to hell was a spiritual model that Plant would use all through for his job. But Robert Johnson wasn't the only American blues artist to leave a young singer Plant with a deep mark. Willie Dixon was also often named as one of his first and most famous. Factors that make Dixon a prolific songwriter: was a producer for Chess Records and was accountable for writing many of the rock blues that British bands would later reinterpret and make songs more electric, like You Shook Me, I Can't Quit You Too, and Write It Down and Bring It Home were written with Dixon and became classics in early songs by Led Zeppelin. For the work of Plant, Dixon not only phrasing and emotional tone of voice to in-depth study but also a large themes in the lyrics that looked at human love, power struggles, and personal turbulence. Dixon's strong presence and Plant was helped by the rhythmic sophistication know how to make drama and sensuality to a song. The coming together of these American influences would later lead to describe Plant's singing style, whether bringing out the haunted desperation of William Robert Johnson or the strutting the authority of Willie Dixon. Plant a style that was both rough and beautiful. His high-pitched tenor, sexual bravado, poetic language and moving lyrics changed the British blues rock movement that led Led Zeppelin to do more than just salute and make something visionary that will last for decades. After some time, Plant keeps talking with respect for these blues ancestors, acknowledging them as the base of his artistic journey and the source where his ideas still come from. James Brown and Elvis Presley. Robert Plant has talked a lot about that his life was changed by music in a very young age, describing vivid childhood memories that helped him prepare for future as a famous lead singer. One of the most telling memories he has is of Christmas when he was 10 years old at a quiet time behind the Robert was young, when the curtains of his family home would look like Elvis Presley taking it easy in The King's Charm and trying to be like him in that same electric place. There was he later remembered a certain mood sound for a 10-year-old I was interested in more than just it was about sensing on a deep level. On an emotional level, the power to change of music. Even when he was a kid, Plant feel how a voice, a hip shake, an AA room could feel alive with rhythm, and the possibility of Elvis with his mix of rock, blues, country, and roll was one of the first and most exciting examples of how music can both move and enchant. But Plant didn't stop getting ideas at Elvis as he learned more about music, added a lot of different artists from soul and funk scenes in the US among the people who shaped him. He often Smokey Robinson and James Brown are two artists whose styles are very something different. Caught Plant's attention with vocal expression and emotional expression. James Brown, who is known as the There Was No One Like Godfather of Soul. His performances with a lot of intensity, explosive energy and physical control of the stage, and a vocal with a lot of rhythm delivery left Plant with a lasting mark. Brown's music was powerful, rough, and qualities that are unapologetically alive. Plant would later take on in his own life presence on stage, especially during the lead performances that are straight up Zeppelin's early years. On the other hand, Plant learned something from Smokey Robinson. In style and emotional sensitivity, Robinson's smooth tenor voice was beautiful love songs, and emotional openness showed a unique side of soul music that stressed the melody's tenderness and the power of a well-written story song. This mix of Brown's raw power and Plant's skill was shaped by Robinson's being aware of what it meant to be a hit. It wasn't just about singing, points out that it was about expressing feelings, taking charge of the stage, and making a strong emotional link within people who saw Jefferson Airplane and the Byrds and Moby Grape. While Robert Plant is praised for having deep roots, love of the blues is his musical. A lot of places are affected by the Delta. As he got better at singing and writing lyrics, Plant took a lot from the sounds of psychedelic and folk rock from the United States in the middle to late 1960s, a time when U.S. creativity exploded. Bands like Jefferson, Moby Grape, and the Byrds were on an airplane. Especially important in shaping him, the full music sounds that became traits of early Led Zeppelin pieces by Jefferson Airplane with their wavy guitar playing is creepy harmonies and lyrics that made you think, brought as if they were from another world. The rock and roll psychedelic movement for Plant, the sound of their music was different from the more rugged sound of the blues, instead a soundscape that was light and airy, grace that is both abstract and emotionally expansive. This song features Slick's strong voice and the experimental spirit of the band. Plant to work outside of his comfort zone, a powerful vocal performance that combines a for songs with a mysterious feel, like Led, the song, What Is and What Should Never, by Zeppelin. This can be seen in Bee and the Rain song. Aura of ethereality, blending delicate melody lines with sudden bursts of energy. The Byrds, one of the first folk rock bands, had a more effect on Plant's melodies and lyric sensitivities with their loud 12-string guitars and a lot of harmonics. The Byrds songs bridge the gap between old-fashioned folk tales, and their music is driven by rock's rhythms. Gave Plant an example of how to weave putting poetic stories into rock formation, something he would look into in depth in his Zeppelin song lyrics for songs like Going to That's the Way and California. Both show acoustic and electronic music use of instruments with introspective, almost pastoral lyrics that make you think of the desire to explore and long for more. Moby Grape, though not as popular, better than the other two, strikes Plant with their unique mix of rock, folk, blues, and psychedelia, all rolled into one, packed into a complex harmony-rich pieces of music. Their way of mixing genres mirrored Plant's own interest in music and hints at the wide range of sounds Led Zeppelin would be known for. Song by Grape can switch between different kinds of music, different styles and moods in one album, or even just one song made Plant feel better and the rest of his band to accept complexity and surprise in how they made their plans. Ray Charles. Robert Plant has never been afraid away from giving credit to the many American artists who had an impact on his music name, but one lasting influence who leaving a very deep mark on him was the famous Ray Charles. Charles's many important works. It was the 1959 hit What Did I Say That? Plant that is often singled out as changes things in interviews and thoughts over the. Plant has said nice things about the song for years, not only for the catchy groove and non-genre sound, but for what it stood for: freedom, spontaneity, and pure expression of emotion. What Did I Say was a brave and exciting track that made it hard to tell the difference. Early rock and roll, gospel, blues, and R&B for Robert Plant when he was young. Hearing that it was more than a song the first time I heard it, it was a revelation to have that musical experience. The unrestrained call and answer between Charles and the singers who back him up, the freeform piano riffs and the raw sensuality of the lyrics made it was brave to try something completely new, alive, and it went all the way across the Atlantic in order to get a British mind-going teen who wants music and soul. What Plant liked most about Ray Charles wasn't just the wise one mastery or the money-making success, it was the way you feel deeply and instinctively. Charles seemed to show how he felt every note he sang and played. Plant has talked a lot about how Charles's his singing style and his ability to improvise in a song made a lasting impression, having an effect on how he sings it. It wasn't about being perfect truth about whether Charles was singing a defiantly joyful line or letting his voice dropped into a soft, painful murmur. Sent it with the sincerity that Plant admired and tried to be like in his own. Displays of this effect can be felt all over Plant's life, especially in his use of vocal improvisation in real-life shows like the ones. Charles Plant often broke away from the strict rules of a recording in the studio with the stage as a room to try out new vocal paths, to play around with tone and get involved with the audience. Felt in real-time songs with dialogue like "Whole Lot of Love" or "Since I've Loved You." You would many times go far beyond their original forms together, as Plant added soulful ad-libs to them and sudden energy, direct echoes of Ray Charles's amazing improvised work. In Ray Charles, Plant not only found a song, not a hero, but a model of how to feel one's halfway through a show. That mix of discipline and giving up on structure and soul is still one of the defining things about Plant's singing style, and goes all the way back to the spirit of what I said, Tom Verlaine. Even though Robert Plant's music comes from stuck in the blues for a long time, always, tastes have gone far beyond he had set limits for himself over the years, has shown a strong appreciation for often artists from different genres giving more to people who are like him, questioned the usual rules. One that was very surprising but telling one example is how much he likes Tom Verlaine's 5 Miles of View, a path from the album Verlaine did by himself after his time with the important New York band Watching TV. Plant said that the song was one of his favorites. Statement that shows how much he loves her for music that isn't simple classification and fights against mainstream recipes. Tom Verlaine is known for his sharp guitar style, poetic lyricism, and moody avant-garde way of writing songs. This may seem like an odd number for as a rock legend, Plant was the first person to out, but Verlaine's music is really mostly in songs like 5 Miles of You. Fits with a lot of the things Plant has always looked for in his own work: mood and emotional intensity, storytelling, and a promise to keeping artistic integrity over making money. That the track is moody and layered and introspective, with a mix of post-punk minimalism and subtle melodies that most likely hit home for Plant's how people felt changed in the 1980s. When he was looking into new sound lands in his solo career, Plant didn't just like the song because he liked it. It was about personal taste, and had a harsh criticism of the music business's focusing less and less. He lamented that this kind of art was played down or even ignored because radio was so important, based on hits and market-driven formulas. He thinks that songs like 5 Miles of You deserved more praise for not for their skill, but for their being ready to step outside the mainstream and get to the heart of things. The thing that Plant said is both an honoring of Verlaine's art and a more general statement about the being left out of nuanced, not usual music in a media land shaped by chart positions. His giving credit to Verlaine also shows Plant's never-ending desire for music that challenges him and asks listeners to explore instead of just eating. It shows that even after many years, despite his famous career, he stayed in school of music, interested, willing to learn, and still finding inspiration in the strangest places. There are places for fans to plant their support of 5 Miles of You gives us a look into the varied playlist that keeps going. Give rock a voice that will last. The amazing string band with Robert. The music that Plant listens to a lot that is more unique and is often forgotten is his great admiration for the string band, an early psychedelic folk group whose music caught the dreams of a generation. Looking something stranger and more mysterious, more like rock or blues music. A certain Plant has made a special liking for their 1968 song, Swift as for the Wind, a piece that, to him, the group's music is ethereal and transportive. Qualities that were talked about in a 2013 in an interview. Plant called the band Dream Weavers is a real word that means captures the fantastical, and their music has an unusual feel to it. The great string band was known for using old folk tunes along with strange instruments, changing time signs and lyrics that went off in bizarre and spiritual allegory. For Plant, that has done a lot of work on the gap between myth and melody. The band gave them some artistic freedom that didn't fit into any category. This is shown very well in Swift as the Wind. Built up with fine acoustic textures, the hypnotic beats and poetic imagery, the A song made a place where music felt like a spell for something wholly a strange and unique. Plant was found they were brave in their work, which his own wish to push the limits of what popular music could say. What really interested Plant was what he called the abstract root of the band that made us ridiculously British. In with this phrase, he knew that an amazing string band embraced their British identity was not found in nationalism or tradition, but through a fun, strange lens that took from Celtic folktales, spooky images, and the rural, the magic of the English countryside. This fun and creative way of thinking shaped not only Plant's lyrics content but also his sense of what looks good. For example, in songs like Stairway to Heaven, The Battle of Heaven for All Time and more, where medieval themes take place in rural settings and esoteric symbols blend together perfectly. With rock music instruments, Plant's praise of the amazing string the band shows how important cultural depth and creative storytelling were to his musical growth while he felt and showed his soul through the blues. And psychedelic rock came out, bands like The would try out new styles. Great string band that showed him how beautiful it is that weaving is abstract, dreamlike and distinctly British, putting ideas into music in a way that was both personally and in terms of the universe expansive. Even after decades, Plant continues to support their work, a proof of how big an effect it had, what effect their dream weaving had on the work of his own famous work life. The Howlin Wolf of the many big names in American history blues artists who changed Robert Plant's style loom as big as the unmatched. It's been a long time since Howlin Wolf. Plant Wolf, as a sign of respect and awe, he was called one of the most strong voices that people will remember in the blues history. When he talked to BBC Radio 4 in 2022, Plant didn't hold back when he praised, calling Howlin Wolf beautiful and strong, a strong person whose presence was as loud as his voice and whose music left a mark on Plant's own identifying music. One particular song that Plant chose, Going Down, came out in that interview. Slow is a blues song that builds slowly. Shows how powerful Howlin's poetry is, the vocals of Wolf and the soft, how great his longtime guitarist is. It was especially Hubert Sumlin. Plant, captivated by Sumlin's guitar playing on the song, praised what he called a finer tremolo and a more nuanced vibrato that added more tension and emotion to the song without making it too loud. The way Sumlin played was light and airy, held back so that each note was important, and Plant clearly learned those things into his own way of phrasing his voice. The dynamics of the relationship between Wolf's deep howl and Sumlin's a shimmering tremolo set the mood that was scary, raw, and deeply human. Things that Plant has always tried to get across in his own performances. What were so strong between Plant and Howlin Wolf, it wasn't just the sound, it was the spirit behind it. Wolf's speech was unfiltered, strong, like he was channeling something very old and basic, and his presence on stage was strong, and the voice had an emotional weight that it was more than just lyrics, it was a story in its purest, most visceral form, for show that you were strong and honest. He wasn't just the gold standard, his style was shaped by Wolf's music, by it showing him parts of himself, blues singers singing style, grittier tones and emotional peaks, and honest without apologizing. Even as Plant moved into the world of hard rock, he learned about folk and world music. He learned from Howlin Wolf, and it never left him. Whether on early Led Zeppelin songs like You Shook Me, or elderly shows that are infused with slow blues, the echo of the Wolf's growl and the tremolo in Sumland can still be felt. Their influences built into the very nature of Plant art will always be a part of the blueprint for sound that continues to guide. By giving songs like Going Down, not only does Slow Plant honor his heroes, not to the truths of our hearts, they gave the world to him, and he works hard to keep it. To say this again in his own voice, Death Coil. Robert Plant's music palette has always been very wide, going far beyond the traditional blues stones and rock basses that first earned praise around the world as one of the most famous rock singers of all time. Has always looked for new sounds, often accepting influences that were not expected, that show how deeply he feels sensibility and a changing artistic vision. One of these is this mortal Coil's eerie cover of Song to the Siren, a piece that has become a beloved entry, a collection of Plant's different works first written by Tim Buckley and Randy Beckett. In Song to the Siren in 1970 had already become a delicate poet composition when they were first introduced to the Buckley's first version of The World, with its painful vocals and sparse. The arrangement was beautiful in its own way, right in its own way, but when this mortal Coil, the British musical of the 1980s, the group led by 4AD Records founder Evo Watts Russell rethought the song in 1983, it took on a whole another new level, featuring the eerie voice of Liz Fraser, who is known for the Cocteau Twins. The cover drenched the song in an atmosphere of haunting sadness and beautiful beyond this world. It was this version that caught Plant's attention. The Plant has talked about his deep admiration for this performance, pointing out how its simple structure and emotional, being open and vulnerable, meant something. Instead of being timeless and deeply human, having confidence and being brave linked to Led Zeppelin, This song to the siren in mortal coil form is broken and full of sadness, and unsettlingly close. Fraser's soft voice floats like a ghost over the background instruments, making the words sound like a prayer or magic spell for Plant, an artist who was always interested in wonder, longing, and the power of atmosphere. It seemed like a good fit for this. Plant's admiration also shows his wider. He has always been interested in music. Supported artists and their ideas that value emotional truth over commercial flash. In taking this on Death, Coil sing to the siren. He's not is just praising a song, he knows the power of being open in art. The version talks about loss of love, the pull of